Hello, my name is Maria Toka. I'm a graphic designer / digital collage artist, and welcome to this new series where I'm going to be reviewing your designs. I've asked you guys on Instagram to send me your work and I'll critique it. Just a quick disclaimer, this is more poster design critique rather than the full portfolio critique, where I'm going to be commenting on individual design pieces. Not necessarily posters, it can be any similar niche like album art, book covers, editorial design, basically anything that involves typography and image. However, the portfolio review is not that much about the design work itself. As far as I know, it's more about commenting on how this work is presented, what kind of impression it gives, and whether it's effective enough or not to attract certain clients or certain jobs, depending on the goal of this portfolio. And in order for me to do that, I need to know a bit more about the experience of this person, what they're doing right now, and what they're hoping their portfolio will get them to. So let me know, guys, if you're interested in this sort of design critique, and I may do that in the future. So back to the design critique. Let's just get right into it. So the first person who submitted their work is Ulas Zenko. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Forgive me if not. I took a brief look at his resume and it seems like he specializes in all kinds of different design niches such as posters, branding, logos, illustrations, packaging, merchandise, just a little bit of everything. And I suppose it's alright as long as you're happy with it and maybe you don't really know what exactly you enjoy doing more. Normally I would advise to niche down, but here on Instagram we mostly see posters and illustrations. I would assume that it's mostly his personal work where he can fully showcase his creative potential and his skills. And I must say that I'm really fascinated by his bold and eye-catching style, the use of these thick, bold typefaces and vivid colors. That's a great skill to have for a graphic designer to grab people's attention. It can be used in many different niches. And he's got a really strong sense of contrast. He's definitely not afraid of experimenting because, as we can see, he uses different sorts of graphics from illustrations, anime style, and photography as well. And he's also playing with type. With different styles. We can see that he also incorporates some hand-drawn typography style, which adds more intensity and roughness to the composition, which is really nice. So let's take a look at one of his work. I think this one stands out to me the most because he uses this collage style and human face features, especially eyes enlarged and disproportionate, tend to always draw everyone's attention. That's just human nature, I guess. Let's just open it. I love how simple and illustrative it is. The color halftone effect really adds some tactile quality to the design. I'm not sure if I would change anything here. I guess it depends on the application of this poster, on the format where it's meant to be presented, and if it's just for Instagram and it's supposed to be showcased only in this small format on your mobile phone, I guess that's alright. It looks totally completed. You don't need to add anything, any small details. The only avenue I would suggest you to explore to push it a bit further is to try to animate it, because I'm envisioning face features to move and the text to appear as if it's been written in the real time, and it could just add even more dynamic to it and expressiveness. Besides, we all know that Instagram and pretty much any social media nowadays prioritizes videos over static images. So it's just something to consider. It's not absolutely necessary, but I mean, that's an interesting direction to explore. But if it's meant to be printed as a poster, that's a completely different story. Again, it depends where. For outdoors, big formats, it's fine, apart from maybe the word art that is uncomfortably close to the edge, and I would just shift it a little bit further from the edge to make sure it's not gonna be cut off during the printing process, because the word art is important here according to the message you're trying to convey. So you definitely wouldn't like it to be cropped. And if the format is still big but it's meant to be displayed somewhere indoors, perhaps you could add a little more details to it. Small pieces of text or just these little hand-drawn doodle elements, something like that. That's just the suggestion to explore. What else can we comment here? Another piece that I would love to comment on is this poster about self-doubt. I really enjoy looking at it as a whole. I sense some Japanese motifs here based on the colors and these black brush strokes. At the same time, you're using this really heavy brutalist font, which creates this really nice contrast of the graphics made by hand and produced by a machine. This is a really interesting combination. Also, the filters and textures you applied add some richness to it. I can spot grain texture and halftone patterns straight away. Yeah, like I can show it a bit more closely. You can see this grain pattern and halftones. Yeah, I just opened the screenshot of it in my Photoshop just to show you the stuff that I would possibly change. But again, that's to the author of the poster to decide if that's needed or not. However, the thing that concerns me a little bit about this poster is the hierarchy. It's great that I can clearly see where the focal point is, which is the man's face in this case. So the title, Outwork Self-Doubt, comes second. But there's a bit of an awkward moment between these two lines, because you can see that they are different in their sizes. But this difference is very, very small and there's not enough of contrast. So you can't really tell which line is more important or are they equal or not. So in my perspective, you just need to either make them the same size or to increase the contrast just to make self-doubt smaller, and then it will come third place. Outwork will be the second and self-doubt the third. That one makes sense. For example, I just wanted to show you how it would look a lot more balanced if you could just make the word self-doubt smaller, and now it's not competing with outwork. It comes second, but at the same time it's good to use the same font because it creates the same, like this sense of rhythm and the same color as well. So everything is coherent, but you can clearly see the hierarchy. And another thing that causes some questions is this word yours one, because first of all, it's a little bit too small. It just gets lost among everything else that's going on around it. If you open this poster on a big screen, you would say, but I can clearly see it. There is no problem. That's true, but if you look at it from afar, just imagine, or if you squint, you wouldn't really see it because these brush strokes are much brighter in terms of the contrast, and this little word is just lost. It's nothing by its brightness compared to all these elements that are happening here. And second thing that concerns me a little bit is the choice of the font or the word your, because it's a completely different style which is not represented anywhere else on the poster. It doesn't belong to neither brutalist or this really handcrafted traditional style, illustrative style. So I would probably replace it to something brutalist and geometric as well, just to complement this font. It doesn't have to be the same font, maybe something a bit more legible, but something that aligns with this style, just to be more coherent. So these are the two things that I would consider changing, or at least just to pay attention to. But otherwise, you're doing a great job and I'm really impressed by it, and Thank you for your submission. Okay, the next person whose work I'm gonna critique is Walk the Cow, Peter Gagley, also a really talented designer / digital collage artist. This guy took my poster design course, and you can definitely see that from some of his latest works, like these ones. We can see how this is reflected in his use of grunge technique, grunge style, textures, some distorted elements, and the color scheme, obviously. But even before that, I really like his creative approach. Just take a look at these collages. I don't know, something like these. I think it takes a lot of imagination to come up with some crazy surreal ideas like that. I think it's definitely his strong point. But for now, let's take a look at one specific artwork that he wanted me to review, which is this one by Odyssey. I can see how he applied stuff that he learned throughout the course, which is this really nice use of halftone pattern, which doesn't look too artificial or polished in this case, which is exactly what I tried to teach. And I really like the result. You can definitely see that he spent some time to play around with the textures, with filters, and also to create this distressed type for the main title. I think it's a really nice use of filter gallery in Photoshop. I think I prefer the colored version of it because as much as I like black and white images, and most of the times they work really well with this grungy style, in this particular case the astronaut get overshadowed by the background. So if you look at it from afar, you wouldn't see much of difference between the tones of Astronaut and 2020. There's definitely a lack of contrast in this sense, because even though it's made as black and white image, hues of grey in it, and if we just blur it, it will appear as hues of grey. And the problem is that Astronaut represents this grey area and the background is very, very similar, and that's why it's hard to identify the main character. And secondly, it's also hard to look at him straight away because of this large halftone pattern on the background. It's not supposed to overshadow the main character because now it draws too much attention to itself. So you either need it to turn it down or to elevate the texture for the astronaut to make it even more eye-catching. So that is the biggest problem here that I see. And this problem is partially solved in the colored version because colors help the subject to stand out, definitely. But still, if we take a look at it from afar, if it appears like a very tiny size, we don't really see much of a difference between the background and the astronaut. We may see some slight glimpse of blue color, but just a little bit, but we don't really see the astronaut as the focal point. And the solution to this could be either to intensify this edge line and to make it more prominent, maybe thicker or even brighter colors, something like yellow. There are some ways to play around with that, but a more effective way would be just to make the difference in contrast between the astronaut and 2020. So whether that be 2020 should be much darker and astronaut lighter, or the other way around. So you just need to decide like what is going to be lighter or darker. Or another thing that I would suggest is just to focus on the word Odyssey and to highlight only this. And in this case, it would be completely alright if the astronaut would be not that noticeable at the first glance. And in this case, we can even make it smaller, something like that. And in that way, we would give a bit more breathing space. Yeah, that's just a quick draft, but you got the idea that Odyssey should be more prominent, and we can even intensify the word Odyssey. We can try to make it bigger. Also, another thing I would try to make the space between the letters smaller. the tracking. Yeah, we can change the tracking that way. So yeah, these are probably my ideas what could be changed about this poster. And another thing to pay attention to is some small details, such as the word space. You can see that it feels a little bit not finished in terms of the edges. I would add the same feel of rough edges to this rectangle and to the word space, just to make it a bit more coherent. But that's just a suggestion. Other than that, you did an amazing job, and thank you for your submission. And the third person we're gonna review today is Kagataiba Cosa. I apologize if I pronounce it the wrong way. He is a really skillful, talented designer as well. And I also took a brief look at his website and his resume. He does all sorts of different design work, anything from branding to websites, social media. But the only thing that confused me a little bit is that his client work is very different from his personal work. I wish he could bring at least some bits of his personal style, and he's definitely got one, to his client work as well. So it would allow him to be more consistent across all the platforms, and at the same time that would show that he actually takes his style and his vision seriously, and it's not just a hobby that has nothing to do with his actual work. But regarding his personal work, he is definitely not afraid of experimenting. He constantly pushes the boundaries further and further with each work, which is something I really admire. This experimental approach, lots of messing around with type and applying multiple filters and effects to it, distortion, all sorts of things. So, and you can tell that he really enjoys what he does. That's amazing to see. And in particular, he asked me to review 3 of his works, and we're gonna start with this one, I Gave Up. And overall, I can say it's a really, really beautiful design, especially when it comes to the main title, I Gave Up. I really enjoy seeing the effects that he applied to it. This really beautiful drop shadow that adds sense of dimensionality to it. And even the fact that he used one text on top of another really doesn't ruin the legibility of the main title, I Gave Up. Or they don't really compete with each other, which is a really common problem when people try to do this trick, putting one on top of another one, and usually they end up with ruining whole legibility of both, or at least one. But in this case, it works really well. Maybe that is laid behind it is not really legible, but I would assume that it's not the most important thing to read here. So it just works like a backdrop. Yeah, if it's not important to read, I think it works really well. But here, the only thing that I'm not necessarily happy with is the composition as a whole, because what we can see here is 3 separate elements. I can show you what I mean when I will open it in Adobe Photoshop. So yeah, what we can see the main title, this block of text, and this block of text. And the problem is that they are not really well connected, especially this text at the bottom. It has no links to the main title. And also the whole composition feels a little bit too symmetrical to me. Like it's exactly the same size of this and this. So as what we can often see on movie posters, they have a similar composition, but the top text should be 1 line is enough, and the bottom text has all the rest of the information, like many lines of text. That would make more sense in this case. So I would either get rid of the top text completely, and it would clear out the layout in general. And also, like if we go with the first direction, just like in movie posters where you can see, I would get rid of these huge distances between words. So it wouldn't draw that much attention to it. It would be just a complementary piece of text to the main title. Or if you want to keep this text as a pattern, like what it looks like now, maybe I would consider to include some sort of third element. I mean, so something like I would take the same piece of text as here and I would place it somewhere in between. We can see like the flow of your eye. It goes to the title, the first thing, then this is the secondary element, and the text is the smallest and it will be the third. Just a hierarchy would work like that. So these are just my ideas, something to consider probably that may work. But other than that, yeah, I really admire the effects and filters that you used here. That's absolutely amazing. The next piece he asked me to review is this one, Center of the Earth. It has a really beautiful application. It adds a lot of depth and richness to the whole composition, and in terms of the layout, it's a lot more balanced because we can see the focal point straight away. Nothing distracts us too much from it. The main title is legible and everything works in this composition. Just the only thing that I would consider exploring a bit further is this text, this piece of text and this one, and I guess it's the same one, which is something that I already don't really like when you put exactly the same copy, and it creates this unnecessary feel of symmetry. Maybe that's my subjective perspective on it, I don't know, but I would consider making it either thicker, as a thicker type face, so it wouldn't get lost. Right now it feels like it adds more clutter rather than the meaning to this poster. So I would consider making it thicker and bigger to again create this in-between medium between the main title, which is really big, and this really small text on edges, which is really small. So I would add this piece of text as something in between. Yeah, but other than that, it's a really great job. And the third poster, absolutely brilliant piece, I'm not gonna lie. And here, everything works really well. Despite you using this maximalist style, and it's really easy to overwhelm the viewer, to make it really cluttery, and here it really works because you kept the rhythm by repeating the same elements. Also, this font works really well with the font of the main title because they complement each other. Also, the fact that you incorporated this hand-drawn typography, it really complements the texture and this 3D grid pattern of the brain really well. Also, you kept the color scheme really consistent. You didn't go too crazy on it. So yeah, like everything works out really well, like I already said. Maybe the only thing that I can say may not work perfectly here, the words "God help me." I had a bit of a struggle to be able to read it. But again, if it's just a secondary title, if it's something that is meant to be more subtle, that's completely fine. So it's up to you, like how much of attention you want to bring it. But in this case, I would assume that the main title is "I'm officially burnt out," and this is legible really well. Again, maybe it's not that clear behind the brain, but it's still pretty legible, I must say. Also, the fact that you justified the word burnt to the edges of the block, and it has really big tracking. Normally, I would go against that, but just because you put the brain on top and these hand-drawn typography elements, I think it works really well. That's all I can say about this work. You've done an amazing job. I can definitely see it hanged on a wall. Yeah, it would make any interior more stylish, I guess. So that's all I can say. So there we go. This was the first episode of this design review series, and let me know, guys, what you thought about it. I'm totally open to any kind of feedback constructive criticism. If you let me know what you'd like to see from these videos going forward. Hopefully this was useful and you managed to pick up some advice, tips that might apply to your own design work. If you want your work to be reviewed next time or in one of the next episodes, just send me a DM on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you don't want to miss the next episodes, and see you guys next time. Bye!